All right, we are live. I won't keep this intro very long. Welcome to In Liberty and Health, everybody. Episode 220. I'm very, very excited for this chat today. Make sure you hit like, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. Check out the links below for all the ways that you can support me and support the podcast. And without further ado, let's go. What is up, everybody? My name is Kyle Matovcik. I am the host of the In Liberty and Health podcast, where we talk all things liberty, health and wellness, and beyond. My hope is to encourage and spread the message of liberty and physical and mental well-being. I hope you enjoy all the topics we talk about with our guests. We're on all major streaming platforms, so please sit back, relax, and enjoy.
Man, I'm doing as good as anyone can do getting buried by his 13-year-old son on leg day.
I'm not going to apologize for not being on this podcast because I got to go see Metallica. So if that's a problem, kiss my ass.
Okay?
All right.
God damn it, I was Jeremy Kauffman with me today. How you doing, man?
It's great to be here. I started to think that I had done something wrong, so you caused like this brief moment of panic over here. Because I assume it's my mistake actually when that happens. No, it's great. So now I'm doing even better because I just had a moment of fear and I've recovered. So now I'm doing even better. I'm doing pretty well generally. I'm a tough guy to get down. Actually, it's maybe a negative characteristic at times because it can lead me to like not being concerned enough. But yeah, like I'm doing pretty well. Things are going well here in the free state of New Hampshire. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I keep a generally optimistic overview as well, which much like you can sometimes probably keep you a little bit away from shit that you realize stinks pretty bad, but sometimes you just keep walking anyways. So I'm sure everybody knows you as kind of like the New Hampshire, right? What do I want to say? I think you really got a lot of attention with the LPNH stuff a couple years ago. And I remember even at first I was a little like doubtful of how effective and how good this stuff was going to be. But now over time I've come to find myself a much bigger admirer of yours and Reed's and everybody else in LPNH. So I guess how are things up in New Hampshire right now in 2023 going into 2024?
Things are going great. So I didn't actually realize that I was going to be on such a far right extremist podcast, which I believe every fit person is a far right extremist. I, by the way, also consider myself a far right extremist, so I'm not trying to impugn you. But the state is just getting chock full of them. I mean, a lot of us call ourselves libertarians, rather than far right extremists. And then there's some even people here who'd say that they are left libertarian or progressive libertarians and that kind of thing, because it is actually a pretty inclusive movement for anyone who would use the word libertarian. But things are going great. We just had the largest pork fest ever. More people are here than ever. We're getting legislative and policy victories in a climate that is like medium. Like we had a better climate 2 years ago, but we just had huge, massive occupational licensing reform. So any license in any state is now valid in New Hampshire. And so that's like not quite as good as getting rid of the licenses, which would of course be the end goal.
Right.
We have a thing I call the Liberty Ratchet, right? So just as long as it only moves in one direction, you're winning, right? That's how you win. And so this makes it that much easier to get great people here that are plenty of electricians and plumbers and people who might need some sort of trade license to do their work.
All right. So perhaps this would be a good question to ask you. And I wasn't even going to ask this question now, but I think it's relevant now that you brought that up. I'm a mechanic by trade, so that's kind of like my bread and butter. If I'm moving anywhere, more than likely it's going to be to Florida. What would be your main argument? What would be your appeal, or the New Hampshire appeal, for somebody like me who's been in southwestern Pennsylvania their entire life, works on cars that are rotted the fuck and bust their hands and knuckles up all day, every day? What would be the appeal of going somewhere else where it's potentially colder, but, instead of going to somewhere warmer?
First, actually, I didn't know you were from southeastern Pennsylvania. I'm a Philadelphia guy and grew up in Abington. So We might have been named.
Well, no, I'm in Pittsburgh. Sorry, Southwestern.
Pittsburgh, Southwestern.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, that's okay.
Anyway, to get to the core of the question, anyway, look, I think the first thing to consider is that like this is not the kind of decision that should be made via the internet. Or even via a conversation. So I'm not trying to deflect on the question because I want to talk about why, but like a big part of why is like things that you really should experience and things that will also be somewhat specific to you, and so they're not entirely generic. So that, you know, come to PorkFest if you haven't. Come for a vacation. Come up anytime. I mean, there are things going on here where like you'll be able to see more libertarians almost any time of year here than most libertarians see, you know, whatever the cap is per year. If you know, a lot of libertarians see, you know, almost none, and they go around in their lives, you know, kind of, you know, biting their tongue a little bit. You know, you're a mechanic. I bet it's not too bad at the car shop.
There are no tongues bitten.
Blue collar work tends to be better in that way. I completely agree. But like, look, it's still like, you know, I think one of the thing that I didn't appreciate the most, like I had my reasons. I believed in the idea of what we were doing. I was going to have kids and I thought that it was a good place to raise kids. But the thing that the sort of most unanticipated reason was sort of a psychological difference or sort of like psychological sort of like comfort from I'm not, you know, just like you're biting your tongue a little bit or you're talking a little bit differently. And it's like, you know, you're all of a sudden you're around a lot of people who really share your values in a way, in a very like authentic way. And I think that there's something sort of like very like pleasing and comforting that kind of comes from that. You know, yeah. So, but I think the real thing though is just to come up for the visit and just to check it out, to meet people and see if that's your place, because I think that's what's like more important than anything. Also, since you're a young guy, and I hope I try to be like a great Jewish grandmother and like heckle everyone into having children. You know, so like if you're gonna have kids, I mean, really, that's perk number one. Okay, awesome.
Soon.
Yeah, awesome. Well, because like that's the biggest thing. I mean, my kid, like, because you know the way that you want to raise your kids, and I obviously even libertarians can differ on this, but we tend to be a bit more permissive, a bit more comfortable with our children, maybe taking risks, a bit more like, you know, permissive. And I look, I have strong rules. In fact, the rules that I have in my household, they got to be followed. But I also think the total quantity of rules that I have in my household is like probably lower than, you know, than a lot of other households would have, you know. And so just things like that, where it's just like there are differences in our values. It's part of why I think we ended up as libertarians. And so to be able to raise your kids in a climate where a lot of other people also share those values, I think that's like that. If you have made me rank like the sort of benefits, it's like that well above tax policy or, you know, whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, I got you. That's really interesting. And, you know, a big thing right now, and I know you caught some flack for this, is like the whole drag queen story hour stuff. And I think you probably think a lot like I do, where you don't assume that your political enemy is sitting underneath your bed waiting to kill you, like a lot of people would have you believe. I remember you put out a tweet saying that there should be child-friendly drag shows, but like, I feel like in New Hampshire, I feel like in New Hampshire, that's like not a thing that happens because the culture there has been cultivated so that people don't like expect that or tolerate that.
Yeah, well, what did I say? What I probably said was something like there should be some places, like not.
Well, yeah. I mean, you weren't saying like, hey, everyone should take their kids to drag, but I think you said something like it. Yeah.
My thing is mostly about like not dominating other people that are far away from me, right. So long as like, even if I find their values very weird or alien, so long as they will also show me that sort of like mutual non-dominant attitude. You may need to act very domineering towards those people. You may need to threaten them. I'm not saying that I do not mean to be foolish or to be naive about the necessity of needing to defend oneself, but like but no, and that is, so it's, to me it's about this, that I believe that this isn't maybe a progressive idea. I sometimes call myself a right-wing progressive, but I do think that our morality should be more locally based. We should be much more centered around the things that are happening in our space and in our community. And part of having a giant world is, we need to accept that, and it's better to be preaching. And this is an idea of tolerance, essentially, that mutual tolerance is better, even to things that I might find morally reprehensible personally. And so, like, what is the line for what I find reprehensible in my neighborhood can be far lower. Like, I don't want heroin in my neighborhood. Okay, I don't want people doing heroin. I don't want people nodding out on the street in my neighborhood. Like, right? But I don't think the same time, I don't think that the state, and when I mean state, I mean like a state or a national government. Like, I find far more things to be permissible at the municipal level, because here you can have an actual competition, an actual market. Right. We need to improve that market. We need to allow municipalities to do more things. We need to allow more private ones. We need to allow all kinds of things. But like at the local level, that doesn't mean libertarianism does not mean permit everything, right? Libertarianism to me is an order based off of private property and mutual contract. That's me. Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, as long as you have private property norms, you can contract on top of your property, and you can produce all kinds of things, and this it really is, by the way, I don't mean to trigger people when I use the word progressive, but like, I like to take the word back a little bit. Like, that's sort of what, if there's a positive version of progressivism, like, that is what it is. It means you're saying that I don't have a specific view of they're more comfortable with a wider set of values, right? Mm-hmm. Now, conservatism locally, I don't want these values in my community. Like, I'm because to me, a lot of this stuff, like, I think it is arguably a small harm to children to be overly exposed to the. Right. I don't think it's a tremendous harm. I don't think it's like people should get their kids taken away, but like, I think it is probably a small harm. To do this small harm, and there are lots of small harms that people do to their kids, right? I probably do some. I let them watch too much TV, or I feed that they get too much junk food or things. And I'd like to think I'm committing fewer of them than other parents, but I'm sure my number isn't zero. And so I'm very I'm really skeptical of this stuff. Doesn't mean I'm pro it. I'm just skeptical of like this idea that, you went to a drag show once and the child was, I think it's much more the pervasive, like the fact that in a society that is being normalized says that is an exposure that's happening all kinds of ways. And what actually changes the child, and what actually, kind of distorts the values from what the values that I find preferable, is not one exposure, but the hundreds of exposures, the cumulative exposures, the repeated exposures, the reinforcements. And so, that's, I think you've got it, and targeting specific instances is part of how you create the cultural pushback. So I'm not actually saying, I actually think saying, hey, going and if it is happening and doing a protest against it to say this isn't what we stand for, I think that's good. I think that's right. Mm-hmm. That's how you defend your, community. And I think something that's also, I guess, one more thing about this that's funny though, is I think the outrage over it, just realistically given people's nature, has actually created more of it, because now you have a sort of fringe left that wants to counter. Everyone wants to, they want to own the cons the same way that I have no reticence to admit that I sometimes like to own the libs, and so they want to trigger the cons, and they don't even believe in it. They don't. It's not look, I'm sure there's some sick people out there that do. I'm not disputing that either. But if you said what, I do, I'm not trying to deny the existence of a real problem. I'm not trying to deny. If you ask me, is the percentage of people who have weird sexual attractions to kids among the drag community higher than outside the drag community? As an empiricist, I'm going to guess yes. I'm going to guess that that's true. Okay. But I also believe in judging individuals, and I believe that there are people who just are genuinely into weird things that I'm not, and they're not every single one of them is a bad person. So, and so my same attitude, because I get in trouble because I'm willing to acknowledge these truths about groups that people don't want to acknowledge, but at the same time, then people will love those truths, but I'm but no, you still need to judge every drag show individually. You need to judge these people as individuals. You want to say, hey, a bunch of them are weird and I'm worried about them in general, and I think they're weird and I think they're gross. Okay, yeah, you can say, yeah, dude, you can, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. But what do you want to do beyond that? And that starts to get a lot more complicated.
Yeah, it seems to me, I was talking to my friend who I just posted his comment there, Kevin Brady, about this. It's literally like as government gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and as the culture war gets hotter and hotter and hotter, each side tends to judge the worst part, or yeah, they look at the other group, their out group, and judge it by its worst members. And as the culture war and the government expands, they continue to see less and less individuals, and they just see that whole group as inherently bad. That's why now all the time you always hear, oh, the left wants you dead, or, the right wingers are out there, killing the trannies. There's a trans genocide. I think this stuff is a necessary part of the dialogue if you want to continue to create division and have an all-encompassing culture war, which is really what we have now, which feeds into this whole engagement broker stuff that we have on Twitter, where just everybody says shit for clout. There's no giving back. There's no good information given. People just say the most obnoxious, unwarranted bullshit to get eyes, rather than, give people good information, arm them with knowledge. And I know you've done a little bit of that, where you and I were talking a little bit beforehand when it came to some of the treatment stuff, if you know what I'm referring to, a treatment that came in late 2020. People have no nuance about this stuff, and it drives me nuts. And then I'll give them papers. I will find research to support what they're saying, but I didn't go far enough. So therefore I'm cucked for said treatment, which it just drives me absolutely batshit nuts.
So yeah, I think you're spot on. And but I also do it. Right. I also do. And I know that I do it.
I think we all do.
I've occasionally done it accidentally, but most of the time I know that I'm doing it. It's very rare that I step in it. I'm like, oh, I'm a little surprised I stepped in it that time. But most of the time I step in, I'm like, I think I might just step in it here, So, or I might be, at least I know I might be. And so, yeah. So why both? How do I reconcile those? Because that's a good question. And so, because to me, it's like, so you've got to meet the world where it is. And I honestly struggle with how much you should do that. Because my genuine nature is to be very thoughtful and nuanced. And if we were able to actually determine policy, by these very highly, autistic or scrupulous or rigorous conversations that were very detailed and cited, and people would do the respectable thing and make bets on their beliefs and have skin in the game, and all the ways that to me this is what you would do if you were actually being truth seeking. We don't do any of that. We've got a lot of people who aren't even capable of it, right? So you've got to deal with the reality that you have a lot of people who literally aren't capable of understanding or even debating some of the things that, and then you also have this whole pool of people and I think this is an important attribute that's separate from intelligence, that's also sort of distributed, that's I think very key in terms of understanding everything that happened, which is how self-deluded are people. There's some people are they're able to see their own limitations, they're able to kind of see things, they're able to recognize things about themselves. Some people are just are just blind to it, and they can't step back, and they don't have this ability to sort of distance, to create this distance even from themselves, and these some of these times these people can be very effective. I don't mean they're very sometimes they're our most effective politicians, there are effective leaders, but there's something different that certainly, I mean, again, of course I want to believe I'm the non-self-deluded person, but I've always felt like I have had this ability to sort of step back and recognize things, and then that's caused me, even I put out an unpopular tweet today, about how look, man, people have believed all kinds of crazy shit about me that there's no evidence for, and people believe it just because it's useful to them, right? And so, okay, well, if I see that sociological phenomenon as someone who wants to be this distance taker, the right thing to do is to say, well, therefore, that's probably I don't think we have some monopoly on reason. The things that humans do are things that humans do. And I am sure, and I don't even mean to claim that I'm above this. What I'm trying to do is just recognize that it's something that I probably also do. And that if we at least recognize these things, then maybe we can see them more often, or make these sort of higher level intellectual, adjustments. But at the same time, it's oh, well, if I am seeing the world as it is, then maybe just pragmatically, I should just go go full, populist, go full whatever, go full whatever benefits, go full will to power, like whatever can get you people to believe you and grant authority to you and whatever, and who cares if it's true, which by the way, I don't think I've gone down that path, but like if anything, I do some of the personal stuff to like make sure that I'm not ever being that way, because it can be tempting, because sometimes I'm like, it would be easy. Some of these people are like hungry for like capable, and like I could give it to them. I could give them, meat. I don't have to do that. And it also helps to have different, like LPNH is certainly more populist than my personal account is, and that's fine. And I think that's good. I think it should be. I'm not like should be. I don't think there is one approach that everything should be done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One thing that I've often complained about with alt media is that people don't always look at, like, they never perceive them having a bias, and they always perceive them as being more right than the mainstream or the mainstream government line that they're being fed. And I find that people lose their critical thinking when it comes to dissident narratives. And I think you really kind of see this as well. Like whenever RFK, for example, I know Tom Woods had kind of jumped your shit a little bit about this, but like when it came to RFK, people think that just because like the WHO or the CDC lied or said a lot of bad stuff throughout the last couple of years, that means that they're wrong about everything. So whoever disagrees with them must be right about everything. And to me, that's just like a knuckle dragging, retarded thing to do that a lot of people just default to, and they don't have critical thinking when it comes to two narratives that are, one extreme or the other. And I think you know how to kind of have critical thinking. And that's why I titled the stream Radically Critical Thinking, because I think you put on your thinking cap before you just say, oh yeah, well, these guys are liars, so that means this guy's right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you describe the phenomenon to a T. I don't, as someone who does like to steal, sort of steel man things or give good. Yeah, it's like, it's not entirely irrational. You learn that this entity has, is lying to you more often than you thought. So therefore, you think more often, that they're lying to you in the future, and so therefore, from there you go. You say, oh well, the opposite of what they're saying, or something like that, must also be more likely. And but I think it's like, to me, the correct sort of epistemological adjustment to make is to say that, well, I should not believe what they're saying to the same degree, but to believe any specific alternative thing, like, still should require like evidence for that thing. Like you should be learning how much the press manipulates things. And there's also, I was trying to remember it, but I can't. There's like a Michael Malice quote about how they lie, but
they're factual, but not truthful.
Yeah. There you go. You got it. Thank you very much. That's exactly what I wanted to say. And that's frequently, that's very often what they are doing. I mean, Malice has, I think, a very sound understanding of the press and what they do. So that's what's going on. And so but that should shift you towards sort of more like radical uncertainty. It should shift you towards like being less certain about the truth of things, not a specific thing. And even like, I mean, even with the Ukraine, Russia stuff, like we're in the fog of war. If you're trying to be correct, now this is where it's different, because the correct position here is I think intellectually to be really pretty uncertain about what's going on, to have low confidence in any specific interpretation of anything. Then pragmatically, if you're trying to shift the populace against supporting this thing, then anything that mocks it, anything that belittles it, anything that lessens it, right? All of that is consequentially good. And any piece of information that moves things in that direction that's simply plausible, well, should I share? Well, it could be true and it helps you. Should you share it from a brand account? I mean, as someone who manages brands beyond LPNH on social media, like that's generally my test. Does it seem like it could be true or plausibly is true, and does it help me? And just to, like, and that's that's not my preferred level of thinking in my own personal life, but like, I don't know, you can't get anywhere in the real world being the way I would want people to be. So like, what are you gonna do? And so that's, I think you've got to compromise, at least a little bit if you're trying to, but I think you should, and so this is also where like, we should also make sure like privately, that we are not losing sight, of our truth seeking, and that's something that I also wonder, because I see, and I there's a lot of people I like who have in the last couple of years collected an audience of people who were COVID, skeptics and so on, and like rightfully so. A lot of these people were hurt or burned and so on, but like I want to make sure, like, I think it's a mistake if the movement goes too far down, just like enabling or mirroring back what these people want to hear, because they're not always actually correct. I just don't think it's true. So I do think we should be showing like empathy and sympathy and not, and so on to these people. And maybe I failed at doing that at times myself, but like the direction should not be to just tell them, what they want to hear either, because it's really easy. I think it's easy to do that. But where do you go? Also, I think, where do you go if you have a collection? Like, you also can't build a movement on top of people with like bad episteme, like who can't think. Like, that's not gonna, like, you need, like, maybe some of them can be in the mix. Because again, that's also, I think it's tricky for me, because I've seen some people here who I'm like, who are here in New Hampshire, like, that person's like really effective. They're actually really effective people. I'm like, they're kind of a little kooky, but they're really effective. I like them. It takes a village. Is that, no, that doesn't apply here. I don't know. I'm genuinely like kind of talking through some of this stuff with you, because it's obviously been on my mind, and I didn't necessarily even intend to be setting off some conflicts. But then, me being me, also leaned into them. So
yeah, no, I totally get it, because I kind of enjoy doing that kind of stuff too. When it came to like the World Health Organization announced that they were declaring aspartame a carcinogenic artificial sweetener, and like everybody completely went to bat with this. And it's kind of funny, because everybody said the WHO was wrong with their handling of COVID, and then they would say that they're wrong about listing red meat as a carcinogen, which they did do. I think it was like red meat is like regular red meat is a type 2, and then like processed meat is a type 1. So then, of course, nobody likes artificial sweeteners. Nobody likes aspartame. So they announced that aspartame's carcinogenic, and everyone's like, oh my God, look, aspartame's bad for you. I'm like, you fucking morons. Now, if you open the goddamn chart, they tell you the outside air, aloe vera, and I think like rainwater are all considered carcinogens as well. So it's like, if you take 2 seconds to just read something and think a little bit critically, you'll be able to find the truth. Oh, and also, in order to get 2 carcinogenic amounts of aspartame, you would have to drink about like 100, I think it was 40 or 35 cans of Diet Coke a day for an extended period of time to get anywhere near toxic levels. So like, it takes 2 seconds to look this stuff up, but people they want the information thrown into their mouth while they drive through to get angry about the next thing at the next stop.
Yeah. So I think this argument relates to a debate that is kind of an implicit one throughout a bunch of LP stuff and other things, which is like, basically like, is like politics about policy, or is politics just war? And are arguments, is argumentation real, or are arguments just soldiers? Like, and that's all that they are. They're just there to be on the battlefield, and to win or lose. It's not about, sort of truth. And obviously one could describe this as a continuum rather than a binary categorization as well, which is generally a more sophisticated and better way to think about these kinds of things. But like, that this you could kind of put a lot of people into one bucket or the other, here. And it's not a debate. We don't frequently actually even acknowledge it in those terms. And maybe that's even like a good step to do that. But that's what I think is happening is there's a debate between sort of those two camps. That's even among the sort of like the reason crowd that would like that likes to attack, Dave Smith. Like part of what they're saying there, or these types, or Clint, or any, like part of what they're saying there is like, oh well, like we think like you're just recruiting this rabble that's so dumb, you know, and you know, that kind of, and I'm an elitist, you know, so I don't, but it's like, no, like these people share our values. That's the key that you need. And that's what I think is really important to keep coming back to in terms of finding the right, it's like, you're trying to find people that share your values. If people share your values, but don't, you know, they're not as good at thinking, or you feel that they're flawed about these other things, it's like, well, okay, we can find ways to work together despite that, right? So it's like, the value alignment is what's key, and then as long as but then also just don't fall into the trap of just like reaffirming, you know, of reaffirming the sort of lower expression. The job of the sort of nobility is to, you know, get the you know, and I'm not, again, it's not, I'm not trying to, I'm trying to find better analogies, like, but like you know, it is in antiquity, what would be a sort of like noble peasant dynamic, and like that, how do you know, your job as a noble would be to serve the peasants, but at times, you know, correct the peasants, and if you're the noble, that's like what a good noble. Well, there are better and worse ways to be a noble, and since we're in a sort of free market society now, your nobles that are shitty to their peasants should not, you know, like, so you would hope that at least over time, the people who you know do about, yeah. But I don't know, man. Again, thinking through this stuff, so push back, or if there's any, you know, chat or any comments, like I don't you know, I don't know the answers, so.
Yeah, no, it's tough to get to the bottom of some of this shit, but I think, like I said, I think you and I both kind of analyze data in the world around us a lot more analytically and patiently than a lot of other people do, where, like, you know, the first thing that everybody will do with like, let's say a cop shooting a black man is, you know, you can predict the left's response, you can predict the right's response, but I think the side of somebody who's looking for the truth typically is going to wait until they get more and more information and then make an assessment. Like for me with nutrition stuff, because this is mostly kind of like what I enjoy talking about, and obviously political stuff too, but like I did the carnivore diet for years. I was an anti-seed oil, anti-artificial sweetener, anti all that stuff. And then now here I am 3 years later, and I just shared a status from like 4 years ago saying like, oh, look, this is where I was at one point. So like all you guys throwing these arguments at me about how processed food is bad and artificial sweeteners are going to kill you and seed oils cause all this inflammation and you're going to get sunburned if you eat seed oils. Like I was there. Yeah. I was there at one point, and then I was convinced by better arguments and by the overwhelming amount of data. And sometimes it just amazes me that like I could do thread after thread after thread, citing studies out the ass of meta-analysis that, you know, were over the course of 30 years of some of this stuff, and people will still say, oh, well, you know, they're still bad for you. Like, well, what is your argument? Do you have anything counter to that?
Yeah, the persuasion is so interesting in terms of what works and what doesn't. And honestly, nutrition for me is another one where I kind of went through the same, like, I've reached like mostly radical uncertainty. I used to have stronger opinions. I mean, I have things I think are true, but like a lot of it is, well, boy, people sure have been wrong repeatedly, time and time again. So, you know, so like I ended up, and by the way, I would feel free to, you know, educate me or push back on, but like, you know, I ended up in like, yeah, well, hey, just like probably err on the side of natural, you know, probably err on the side of things that people have been eating for a long time. People certainly used to not be so fat. People certainly used to not be so, you know, overweight. So if you're, you know, that's like a decent heuristic, and obviously you need to exercise, you know, and you need to do whatever. And I have more complicated opinions than that, but like that would be my very, you know, low level.
Yeah, I would generally agree with that. I would say if you can, try to opt for leaner proteins. The thing that a lot of people leave out when they talk about the hunter-gatherer stuff is that they leave out the gatherer part, where people thought it was just men killing woolly mammoths and bringing them back to the to the tents and then people cooking them and eating them. But there was a lot of gathering there done too. Like our ancestors used to eat anywhere from like 50 to 60 grams of fiber a day. So you have to imagine that's a lot of fucking berries like a lot of different fruits. So like that's the part that typically most people leave out just because it doesn't sound as sexy as what's going to do.
I think I'm doing okay there. I'm definitely not hitting 50 grams of fiber, but I'm doing a lot of fruits and veggies and so it's but airing that that way. And also I also think, and again you talk like similar to like it's more the like cumulative and regular, like you're not you're not the some indulgences, some whatever, like you should have look, we live in modernity, the fact that we get to experience some of these things that our ancestors did not, you get to taste that and gloat about the fact that your great grandfather or whatever, no, let's go back farther, had to work so hard to let you to let you get that ice cream sandwich, so because it's a miracle, so just don't eat too many of them, don't eat them all the time,
I would generally agree that like as long as you have 1 or 2 ice cream sandwiches in a day and maybe 1 or 2 throughout the week, you're probably going to be okay. And as long as you're not eating a whole chocolate cake every single day, you're probably going to be okay. If you get 3 good meals with protein and fiber and fruits and vegetables in it throughout the day, probably going to be okay. People just get so way over analytic. Oh, what about your omega-6 to omega-3, the nutrients and your fats, carbs, proteins? Like just try to get enough protein, try to get enough physical activity, try to get enough fiber, and don't go buck wild on pouring oils, butter, or sugar into everything that you do. And that generally gets like a good diet, kind of like you have everything right there. You could still have processed foods. And the thing that irritates me about this is that like people throw out words like chemicals and processed foods to sound scary. But the fact is that processing is just like, a ribeye steak is something that all of these people that I'm talking about would eat no problem. But a ribeye steak was processed, right? That had to be removed from the cow, cut, and then, dry aged or whatever. There was a process. There's chemicals in that steak too, as in the fats, the proteins, everything's a fucking chemical. You're just saying that to propagandize people. Just critical thinking for a lot of this shit just goes out the window. And I can't fucking stand it. Like I said, Kevin there in the comments, him and I were talking all day about this stuff. I was talking to somebody about the treatment that I was referring to earlier. And he said, watch what happens to your friends in 20 years who took this treatment. I'm like, do you realize how ridiculous of a statement that is? Wait 20 years. Do you know how much shit can fucking happen in 20 years? Like, just like, a little bit. Just try a little bit. That's literally like an 8 IQ statement.
But that's what I mean. So like for most people, a conversation about nutrition is like they're not really having a conversation. Like they're not really, a lot of them, they're not really interested. Their arguments are their soldiers, and they want to go out and deploy them into battle, and they want to smash them into one another, and they want their soldiers to beat up the other person's soldiers. And if they didn't win, all they do is they go home and they research better soldiers. Like they're not actually interested in like figuring out like, were they wrong? Could I be wrong? Like it doesn't even enter their minds. Like they're just trying to march forward and defeat the enemy. Right? They don't ever think could they be the baddies, and like, like I want to not be that way. Because I think if you don't, because I think like you cannot be that way on purpose. Right? Like I'm sorry, you can be that way on purpose rather. Like you can be that way on purpose, but if you let yourself become that way naturally, you'll stop your ability to find truth. And I've got to think that like actually understanding reality is the start, right. And if I understand reality and I understand the truth, then like, well, maybe there are times I might strategically, propagandize or whatever, because I do have to meet the world where it is. Right. But like that, but marketing, like literally how truthful is marketing? I mean, marketing is so accepted to be sometimes a lie that we have court standards of things like puffery, that when you say that this is the greatest breakfast sandwich you will ever have, right? Like that is not a That's not a truth. Yeah, that's just not regarded as you didn't commit fraud if it wasn't, you know. So like we kind of yeah. So well, I'm bringing it back to something we kind of already hashed, but yeah, it definitely gets complicated. The nutrition one, I guess. Do you want another interesting thought I have here about something that happens related to these nutrition fads?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, all right. So, because one of the things I did this interview recently, and it was something that was on my mind about how like we see these weird correlations between beliefs. Like, why do the Bitcoin people hate seed oils? Like, that doesn't really make sense, right? That these beliefs would be like so coupled with one another, right? Like, if the evidence that seed oils, you know, does all these things, like you would expect that like the cloud of seed oil memology, like, and the cloud of like Bitcoin memology, like, why are these clouds like the same cloud, you know? And or not entirely, of course. I'm not like, but there's not what you would expect if they were like, you know, not statistically correlated either. They seem strongly correlated, and so you know, there's just some kind of phenomenon where like just like ideas spread inside, like once certain people, maybe it's certain people inside a community adopt them and they trust that. You know, I don't know actually exactly. It's just like a weird thing. Like, what do you have any thoughts on that? Why that happened?
So, if I had to guess, it's because it's kind of like sugar or high fructose corn syrup, right? Where you could draw a pretty good correlation with obesity and high fructose corn syrup. But the fact of the matter is that just like over the last, you know, couple decades, people generally eat more of everything.
No, I don't even mean the seed oil claim. I don't even mean the seed oil claim. I mean, why did it get so like? Because okay. Why did the Bitcoin community become the community of people that doesn't like seed oil?
If I had to guess, where I was going with that was basically seed oils are in like everything, right? You see, you know, corn syrup solids or, you know, soybean oil and a whole bunch of stuff. And it's an easy thing to say. So like, you know, obviously we have an obesity problem here in America. So like, these people are already dissidents, right? Because in order to like buy into Bitcoin, you already have to be kind of like informed of a counter narrative. And I'm not even saying like this is a bad thing. Like I think Bitcoin's actually a good thing. So these people are already kind of skeptical of government and fiat as a whole. So they're already more likely to be conspiratorial minded. And I'm not saying that in a pejorative way. I'm just saying they're already open to the idea that there are some kind of larger nefarious actors. So when they hear a narrative about seed oils, my man here. So when they see seed oils are in absolutely everything, and then you have some people like, let's say Paul Saldina, who's like a big carnivore guy who talks about seed oils a lot and how quote unquote bad they are for you. He's a dissident kind of person who does the carnivore diet, and he, you know, is speaking a lot of like this counter narrative. So he provides them what they want to hear. And then you say, hey, seed oils are bad and they're in everything. This is why everybody's fat. Then this kind of like gives people that confirmation that, oh, this is why everybody's fat, is because seed oils are put in everything. Therefore, people eat all this stuff and all the processed foods which have seed oils. So therefore they're fat because of this. And because this is a conspiracy that kind of fits my worldview already, because I'm already kind of in that mindset. I know I may have like rambled a little bit, but does that make sense?
No, I think that was a really good answer. No, I think that makes sense. You know, and I think actually that kind of selection effect type thinking, where there's some selection for, you know, I think that probably I think that's frequently like an explanation for all kinds of things, and that would fit here. Yeah. Well, yeah. What else you got? Do you want to talk some? We got there's always LP drama. There's
well, you know, I'm kind of curious. Where did for me, where I got to kind of critical thinking was by being proven wrong so many times. So I'm guessing you've probably been along that journey quite a few times where like you were dogmatically in one camp. Like I was a pretty big Trump guy. And then I remember watching a video of Tommy Sotomayor talk about like gun control when the bump stock ban first went in, and he was knocking Trump for that. And Tommy Sotomayor was black and people were calling him, you could imagine. And he said, why are all these people praising me now? Or why were they praising me? And all of a sudden they hate me because I changed my mind. That was kind of like the first light bulb moment for me. Then I'm like, oh, everything with the Republican Party and everything I've been told about Trump may not be true. In fact, this may be just a lot of puff marketing from their side.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, a lot of it was, I mean, I haven't been wrong in at least a decade. So no, I'm joking.
You said that pretty good.
Yeah,
that was convincing.
But no, I mean, I think like you do make more mistakes when you're younger, right? Like I do think that's true. And so for me, this sort of like youthful, a lot of it was actually on the internet. I was on the internet like as a teenager, and it was a big sort of coming of age actually experience for me. You could even tie it all the way back through to the work I'm even doing today of like, because the internet when I came, when I was coming of age was like, it was a lot different than the internet today. It was all text. It was, and it was a lot of like smart libertarian men. Like you'd find it was a much higher percentage of those people. So if you were in any given internet community, there were more of those people. And so, it was definitely places like that, because I wasn't getting it in school, right? I wasn't getting it in my, in my high school education, but I would go on there and I would talk on forums, or I'd end up in a chat room and just things like that. And, so a lot of them I couldn't even point to, although there was one guy, I remember there was a guy named Philip Greenspun who had this blog that I read when I was like 16 and 17 and 18. And he changed, a bunch of my, opinions about things. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of that. You would go, and although for me, I mean, I also like, I liked physics. I got a degree in physics. I've always had that kind of mentality of like wanting to get to the truth of things, wanting to get to the bottom of things. And so, I viewing truth probabilistically and having an uncertainty and hey, let's ask questions. Like it actually took, one of the things that I was the most wrong about was like thinking you could win that way. And like eventually, maybe that was one of the slowest lessons I had to learn was that this is a very good skill set to have, but it's not all you need. And learning more how to do some of the other ways of persuasion, because that was probably took me even longer to learn. So
yeah. Well, I feel like a lot of what we're seeing today is like brand marketing, where essentially like every single politician and everything that you watch is now a brand. It's no longer about the arguments, which is kind of, I think, what you were getting at there, where I want to say it was Jeff Dice who said that we're in like a post-persuasion America. Yeah. I think that is pretty damn close to the truth, because if you think about Donald Trump, for example, he was on all sides of every single issue, but it worked to his benefit, because whenever something went bad, then he could just say that he was on the right side of the issue. And I think we see this with a lot of people, and it works to their advantage. Me personally, I try to call the truth as I see it. And if I'm wrong, I'm usually pretty happy to admit I'm wrong. But, we all want to be right all the time. And sometimes it may hurt to say that you're wrong.
Yeah, so that's another very good question point, and it's I think it's mostly true. What you do about it, again, I don't know. I mean, because I of course want to be the sort of the way that you're saying. I think one thing that you can do, it's sort of one sort of compromise that I've settled on at times, is like, well, like, look, if you want to go into that mode, I will go into that mode at any time, right? Like, would you like to have the calm, factual discussion and act like this is real? Okay, because I will, because I will do that. I actually am capable of doing that, and I actually can do it. My mind can be changed. But like, I think that's not that a lot. But if that world is pretend, well, then it doesn't serve ourselves to engage in fantasy, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to be LARPing when we could be, fighting the real fight. So if the real fight isn't that, then we should fight the real fight. Okay, well, and in the circumstances in which I can have this other conversation, right? Like, as long as we cannot lose ourselves, that's the danger, right? The danger is that you lose yourself either in the audience that you're chasing, or just in hey, our behaviors become habits, right? So if you start behaving a certain way, maybe it changes you. Maybe you lose the ability to be the other way. But I think like that's something of the way that I've tried to do it myself, where, hey, do you want to have the debate? Do you want to have the thing? But like, if I'm dealing with people who can't even engage in that thing, then yeah, maybe the answer is to yell at them or to meme them or to dunk on them or whatever the answer might be. That's because that's how humans actually change their minds, and they don't change their minds through the argument thing. They change their minds through these other ways, because that's the way that we evolved to be,
Yeah, no, it is frustrating, because you would think that sometimes giving people, facts and evidence that they should change their mind in light of that, but unfortunately they don't always do that. I
think you probably change more people's minds, like being like, hey, look, I'm a fit dude. I've got my life together. And you just say something like that changes people's minds more than, and you say it with confidence. You have the body because you believe it. These are the things that they say, hey, that Kyle guy said that thing about Cedos. Kyle seems to know what he's talking about, and like that's what you did. That's how you changed their mind. You might have said facts in there, but that was not what they latched onto as to why.
Yeah, the cap delts are what caught him. Yeah, it's something like that. So you mentioned Libertarian Party stuff. I know you ran for Senate last year. What are your thoughts kind of post-mortem? Because now it's obviously about a year after that. Do you plan to run again? What were some lessons? Just kind of any thoughts from there and potentially going forward for you?
I've got no plans to run again. I have maybe plans to do videos again. I shot a video with Dan actually just a couple of weeks ago. Cool. So maybe we'll do that again. I'm glad that I did it. I think the party here has only been getting stronger. I think
Reed stopped in to say hi, by the way.
Yeah. I think it's a good question. They've got to find something to do. Some ways to generate some victories. I think they should just spend every remaining dollar constructing buses to ship every existing libertarian, to New Hampshire. I think that would be how I would spend LP national funds. But I'm not in charge over there, so I'm probably not going to get my way. So they've got to find a way. And like, I'm rooting for them. I hope they can, produce some victories. I hope we can be a part of that. I hope that we're helping rather than hurting whatever they're working on. But the truth is, we're kind of doing our own thing, and we're not trying to hurt their thing, but we're doing our own thing, and we want to find ways of working cooperatively, because we want the same outcomes. We might disagree on how to achieve them, but that's fine.
I get it now. Now that's really interesting, because I know Reed's kind of been in that situation as well, and I know there have been quite a bit of bumping of the heads. But it's kind of sad, because I almost look at LPNH as like a North Star. And yeah, people could say you guys are shit lords or shit posters, but at the same time, it's like, man, you guys get a lot of eyes. And I think people underestimate in 2023 just how much that kind of brand marketing really does sell. I know we were talking about that earlier, but like LPNH essentially has been the only Libertarian Party faction that has really made themselves a brand, where like, what to expect from LPNH. And yet people could say, oh, it's edgelording, it's this, it's that, but like, what you're going to get. Whereas like every other LP account, you could expect some platitudes and maybe a little bit of information, but like, they don't stand out like LPNH does. And I think, you guys' messaging and the way that you guys do things is kind of why that is. Now, I'm guessing kind of what you're putting down is that there's some turmoil in leadership and everything like that. But I would also assume, and you could correct me here, that the culture that you guys have developed there is kind of there to stay regardless of leadership.
I actually don't think there is much turmoil in leadership. I think LPNH is pretty committed and likes what we're doing. I think part of what we're doing is kind of a mix of what I was saying earlier, like LPNH, absolutely, of course, you do know what you're getting in the sense that you're going to get some edgy. But what I like is that we can also flip the switch and be serious. We can flip the switch and do policy, and we can and I think that's actually very key, because if you can't just be the troll. I think you've got to be able to you can do both. I think that's actually really powerful, because the trolling can get the attention, and then you can demonstrate that you have, seriousness and facts and these other things in your side.
Yeah, so this is something I brought up with somebody. I'm sorry to interrupt, but like Twitter is kind of like, you have to be as retarded as you possibly can be while still maintaining integrity, because that's the only way that you're going to get engagement and eyes, is by being an absolute moron and then hope that people stick around to see your good information. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I feel like that's kind of what you're getting at.
Yeah, that's very much so. And part of what we've absolutely been trying to do, in general, and I just gave a talk on this at PorkFest that I think is like sort of the best talk of my my political philosophy that exists currently in the world. It's called "Doing What Must Be Done," and I really encourage everyone to watch it. But part of what we're doing is perceptions and reality are very related. Right. And LPNH is substantially trying to change perceptions because that's very related to reality. And when you say that you're building the brand, right, that means you're changing perceptions. Those are very related things. And that brand, even in terms of results, is doing things. LPNH has a number of fans and followers, inside of the New Hampshire Republican Party. We have people that we have become friendly with solely through our Twitter account. Twitter is a dating app, right? That's what they say. So it applies, same thing, right? Dating, politics, same thing. I don't know, maybe that's not true. But the point is, we got people to like us, through our posts. That's what I really mean. And so that's real. That happened. We have people that we can, DM. We have people that are going to support legislation. We can tweet things and move the direction, even if I'm not saying we control the state or anything like that, but we can tweet things and move the direction of New Hampshire politics. We can get the Democrats and anyone in the state to respond to us. We can get the governor to respond to us, right? Like, that is power, right? That is a form of power. And if you can use that and continue to build your following and to continue to grow your following, then you can continue to grow and in power and influence. And so obviously, we would like to get people elected, but I think in terms of is our influence and power growing, I think that it is, and I think that Twitter can be a place for that. It's not. I'm not saying it's everything you do, and it's not where we do on the ground work. There's a ton of work going into Defend the Guard. There's other things that are happening here. But this idea that, it's just about attention, I mean, it's clearly producing actual results, I think, as well.
Mm-hmm. So I guess the next question that I kind of I'm very curious about actually is, do you think you could have done this through the Republican Party? And this isn't to be like, I think you should, but in my mind, it almost seems like you would have too many people who just wouldn't get it or would be a little too stingy if they were in the Republican Party. And I know, like, you're not particularly partisan in this respect, because I know you said that you I was watching your appearance on Timcast where you said that not LPNH, but like New Hampshire has a website where they kind of like suss out which candidates are good on liberty issues and aren't. So I guess I'm kind of curious, like, what your idea is or thoughts are on maybe trying to cultivate that culture in the Republican Party, and why or why not you think that's feasible.
Well, I think that culture is, you mean the New Hampshire Republican Party, or do you mean the National Republican Party?
LPN or the New Hampshire Republican Party. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's happening. I think we're a part of it. I think we're actually not the leading part of it. I think the leading part of it is the elected state reps who are committed libertarians, right? Like, and that's the biggest driving force. Is there's a bunch of people elected, several of whom are lifetime members of the Libertarian Party. Others are, literal ANCAPs, or literal anarchists, or, as right-wing libertarian as you could get, and we also have even like centrist libertarian, types. There's actually one libertarian here who's very disliked right now because he like broke with the conservative wing of the party on social issues and and defeated a bill that they wanted to pass, which maybe which was maybe not in our collective best interest, but like it was his own personal conscience, and I'm not going to condemn someone for really following that. So that's happening. That's happening. And so what could LPNH do? I mean, like the thing is, LPNH 4 years ago had, no attention on it. No one cared about it, had no account, with any substantial following. And, a team of people, as well as people that aren't, it's not just the people on the account, by the way, like the volunteer effort, people that were in my campaign, a whole bunch of people contributed in one way or another to getting this thing to be bigger. And it's like, well, Reed Coverdale was not going to end up on the NHGOP account. So like, what is that? Where else can that work be done?
Right.
And part of what makes it work, by the way, like, is that it's a political party saying some of these things. Like that is part of what makes it work. Like if some of those edgy tweets went out under anyone's personal name, they would not have gotten the reaction that they did. It's that part of what makes people gape is, I can't believe a political party is saying that. And so like, that's got to be there, to get to do some of those things.
Yeah. And you know what? It took me a while to really understand that. But when you have the Israel Times writing about the Happy Holidays tweet, I think that was like a watershed moment where I was like, holy shit, I finally get it. Like, you're not necessarily trolling your way to the White House, but like the people who are going to laugh at that are on your team, right? And then the people who aren't laughing at that or are disgusted by it, you probably weren't very likely to convince them anyways. Like, not to say that that's like the ultimate test, but I think it could tell you a lot about where people stand on a lot of issues. And I think that we saw a certain show on YouTube that's very, very popular and platforms all our people, right? We saw where they stood, and it's clear that they're willing to, guzzle war criminal cum versus platforming libertarians.
I don't even know all the weeds on that one. My understanding is there was some internal strife there. So maybe we helped make the show better overall. Maybe that's I couldn't say. Although actually the member that's no longer there is the nicest one to me personally. So, but no, right there. The Tim, look, the people on Tim's show seem to be fans of what LPNH is doing, and I really want to keep my heat mostly for people who I think are my true enemies. Like, I will bring full heat. I will say the worst things about you, but I want to people that I can work with, people that I don't want to be that way towards those people, even so when there's, I don't like the amount of infighting that, that happens online and, that, and that kind of thing. Even with the recent ones, I've actually been on a, and I'm sure someone can maybe find a sin because we all have our natures, but I've been trying to do only polite replies to libertarians for at least a full year now, maybe longer. So if I,
you're a better man than me.
Not always. Sometimes you can do the gentle dunk. I'm not saying that I wasn't at times, but I'm trying to not to cause unless it's, again, hey, if someone shouldn't be here, that's different, right? If it's someone that this is someone who is trying to wear our label and do something else with it and make it something else, you got to be a guard dog to those people. I don't have a problem with there, but I think the amount of people who are literally bad actor infiltrator level is very, very small compared to the amount of people who are mostly just stupid or naive or whatever. And those people you want to attempt to, and I'm sure they're good people. I don't even think they're all stupid or naive, but whatever. The point is that you're trying to, like try to walk them or try to get them to understand your positions. Like if someone was a member of the Libertarian Party for 10 years and they hate the Mises Caucus or whatever, like that person's like probably not my enemy, like almost certainly not. So, making that be the kind of person that you're going to like obsess about or go out of your way to hating,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I gotcha. So one thing I don't think I've ever heard you speak on, I feel like you might have an interesting perspective on this, is kind of like the post-libertarian moment, and where a lot of guys in that camp might say that we should abandon the idea of libertarianism because it's been infiltrated by progressives, and or libertarianism doesn't work. Like I don't think I've ever heard you really comment on that. So I'm kind of curious if you have any thoughts. And obviously we're a little bit past kind of like when that was, but I still feel like there's still people reminiscing and talking about that general idea.
So there's a wide variety of things in that space and that get that label.
Sure.
Some of which I would have some sympathy to, at least in the sense that these are like cogent criticisms of libertarianism that need to at least be engaged with. Some of it I think is people just saying, yeah, like, no, I'm just not, like, they just made the move to author-right. Like they just decided that they're not libertarian, right? They're author-right, right? Like, and that's just where they realize their political home is. But some of it, like, I mean, you could argue that some of what the Free State Project is doing is, quote, post-libertarianism. So you kind of, well, what do we actually mean by this space of words? Because if we just mean to like give up on mass political persuasion and and to attempt to create a sort of private property order via other means, like that's I agree. That's what we should do. So then maybe I'm right. But if that's the definition, I'm a post-libertarian, right? But like if it's something else, to me, I think like even if the post-libertarian criticism is like it can't work, but you're still saying it's like some sort of ideal, I mean, the question would still be like, well, okay, how close do you think we can get? Like, even I'm a pragmatist. Like, I'm not like, I think anarchy versus minarchy is like a borderline dumb debate because it's like, well, who cares? Like, why do you care? Like, are you telling me I have to pay my 2% national defense fee? Like, what a joy of a world we've achieved, like, versus not having to pay this, compared to where we are. So, I want, in terms of New Hampshire, where like what I want New Hampshire to turn into that kind of place where you want New Hampshire to turn into even a sort of Switzerland, internally, right? Like you want even more diverse than that, right? You're going to need some framework. The idea would be that this is a place where all kinds of people, as long as you agree on those diverse sets of things, even some people who are weird or kooky, whatever. Like, but we're trying to get anyone who can agree to those basic principles here because there's no one else, there's no other place in the world for them to be, and so. That is in some ways like a post-libertarian, kind of idea. So that part of it I have sympathy to.
Sure.
So if there are other parts of it that you want me to respond to, you could spell out the specific belief in more detail.
Sure. Yeah. So perhaps one of the other things that's common amongst that group is that they really like the Ron DeSantis style of governing. And I got to say, I actually, in a way, am sympathetic and kind of like it too, in the respect of I'm going to use the force of government to protect my people from greater evils than the government than the law it's enforcing. So like, telling private businesses that they cannot have vaccine mandates for private businesses. In situations like that, I think that's a very, very reasonable thing to do because you're stopping a potential greater harm that may invade private businesses. But, when it's coming down from the White House and it's the state saying, hey, you can't do this to private businesses and I'm not going to allow private businesses to do this. I don't see it as entirely a bad thing. And if you disagree, then I'm, more than happy to hear it.
Well, so do I see it as an entirely bad thing? I could already say no. I don't see it as an entirely bad thing.
Sure.
I mean, on that issue narrowly, I would still cling to the to the private business angle, but rather than making it about that issue narrowly, but to talk about the principle generally, because it is one where I have some sympathy to DeSantis' position or this position on some things. It's like, what to me, in terms of what I'm trying to do, like I'm most comfortable compromising when I feel that it's moving things in the direction that helps like sort of the brand of the state, that helps reinforce the political and demographic trends that I think are necessary or beneficial to enacting the political change that I want. And so there I'm the most willing to compromise. I also am fine with I technically want a private property bottom up order if the state of New Hampshire smacks down a lefty city for doing some lefty thing. Well, like I'm trying to drive the lefty progressives out. So I don't care that it's a violation, of this like abstract norm that, I just don't care. I just don't, because I'd rather get the outcome. And so I can kind of, I guess I can get that mentality. But in terms of the test that I apply for my own aims, it's like basically like I try not to compromise, but if it's things that help move the both reputationally or directionally move the state, then you can get me to compromise pretty easily. So
I got you. Yeah. So one other question I guess I would have is that some people knocked New Hampshire for voting for Biden in 2020. And I think I've heard your rebuttal to this. It was something akin to the government surrounding the governor, who is a Democrat, if I remember correctly, is so far like more libertarian that like the fact that it went to Biden or the fact that there's a Democrat governor is kind of null. Did I sum that up correctly? And if I didn't, what did I get wrong?
No, well, that may be true, but I'd say there's a couple of things. So one is the big and the most important factor, and is kind of weird, but like New Hampshire actually does have people who appear to like genuinely consider the candidates. Like it has the fewest quantity of people that like are just that just team one or the other. Because the same year that Biden won, New Hampshire voted for a Republican governor like 66 to 33 or like something like really egregious. So it's not their just voting Democrat or voting Republican, because the Republicans controlled the state house, the state senate, the executive council, and the governorship. The only place they voted Democrat was Biden, right? And and they did actually, the senator won. But again, the two Republicans that lost on the national ticket, that lost in the biggest races, were Trump and this guy Don Baldock, like both of whom are like, to the average New Hampshire voter, I think they're regarded as like a little bit fringy. Like they're like the sort of like never Trump population that would have existed in 2016. Like there are more of those types here than any other place in the world. Like you're supposed to be nice here. You're supposed to be nice to other people. Like this is it's like stepping back in time, politically when I first came here, even 8 years ago.
So when you say never Trumper, do you mean kind of like the left never Trumper, or kind of like
the Republican? When I say never Trumper, I mean the Republicans that were never Trumpers. Yeah. So like you had like, honestly, Trump. I'm a never Trumper this year because like he just for free state interest, like just so many people. Like he's got this base that really likes him, but he's got a lot of people who really don't like him. And we've got a lot of people who just want to win as Republicans down ballot. And so, having a Trump that like drives a bunch of people out to vote against him, that go and vote Democrat down ballot and things like this, but look, the New Hampshire model, the New Hampshire like popular model of Republican is like definitely more the Mitt Romney than the Trump in terms of the generic average, person. But like, I don't think that's necessarily like bad. I mean, Mitt Romney went like really woke and he sucks. I'm not trying to defend him, but like the fact that like the average person is like, well, I would prefer the like smarter, more thoughtful candidate. Like, that's not necessarily a bad attribute when you're populist if you actually want good government, So the fact that New Hampshire, like the reasons by which, like it's like kind of wholesome, the reasons that New Hampshire has rejected Trump. Even as someone who like I like some of Trump's antics, I'm like I voted for Trump once, and I'm not like I think Trump has even done a decent amount of good because he exposed a number of things, if only implicitly, to a lot of people. He like really he caused a political realignment that I think was beneficial. He wasn't. I don't think he was a particularly libertarian president. I'm not gonna like really defend his record, but it could have done worse, I guess.
Yeah, I got that. And Reed said Sununu's Republican. Yeah, I did mistake that. I should have known because I've talked to Reed quite a bit, and me and him keep up with each other.
But Sununu's like a no labels Republican. Like he's like I'm a centrist problem solver. Like
he's like a Mitt Romney Republican almost.
Yeah, or Jared Polis Democrat. Like he is. Like he's yeah, but because he's actually a Republican, he's not bad on guns. Like he's not bad on these other issues. Like here's Chris Sununu got awarded by Cato like most libertarian gunner. He loved it. He ate it up. He's like, I love being loved by these guys. Like that's like he likes the I'm collecting accomplishments and look at me, I'm the good governor. Does he have libertarian ethics? Like no, but is he like he's an engineer? He understands that markets work and are better than not markets. Like for the most part, like. Part of the reason he made the occupational licensing thing, the governor made that happen, not even the Free Stater Republicans. It was the governor's specific priority. And part of the reason he did that is like, I like getting these awards from Cato. Like seriously, that is like part of the motivation as to why he did that. And so I think New Hampshire, he wasn't the purist on COVID that everyone wanted. But like on the whole, I think he, I think New Hampshire could do a lot worse than Sununu. I actually think the next Republican, if Sununu doesn't run and it's the Republican who's sort of next in line, if she wins, I think she'll probably be a little bit worse than him, although not bad overall. But yeah.
I got you. So I guess a couple last questions and we'll rock and roll out of here. Where do you see where do you see New Hampshire after the 2024 election, and where do you see New Hampshire in, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've got to, we're continuing to get the next ground, and I think it's very important, first of all, that we just never lose. So look, it's not a given. Things are continuing to change and so on. So first thing is just to make sure that we continue to retain, Free Staters continue to retain as many seats as possible. It's helpful that the Republicans do have majority control, although having majority control where it's slight majority control can actually be pretty good for us rather than like overwhelming control, because there are things we can work with the Democrats on, and it also means that like you can't get anything done without the Free Staters. Like that's also helpful. So you ending up somewhere in that space would be very good. The top there's sort of two sides. You've got the sort of like most important things that cause a bunch of heat, and then you've got the sort of unimportant things that no one notices that you can just continue to do. And the most important thing that causes a lot of heat to me is the schools and the teachers unions. And so when they are the most powerful opposing political force to the free, like it's not even the Democrats, it's the teachers unions. It's the teachers unions and the schools. So anything that can be done that can continue to lessen their power, lessen their money, lessen their influence. So basically continuing to advance school choice. And we did, and this happened again this year. New Hampshire already had school choice. The school choice has an income cap. Well, what did they do? They couldn't do much this term because it was very contentious, but they did manage to ratchet the income cap up by like another 20%, And so if you just, whatever you can do, you grab everything, whatever you can do, you just keep doing that thing. And so whatever they can do against the schools, whatever the biggest piece of the pie that they can get. Obviously the whole pie is going, complete, well, full school choice would probably be close enough to the whole pie, but if we could, go beyond that, that'd be great. But full school choice, like literally full school choice, like nothing, no privileges for the government schools. The government schools effectively got to compete on equal ground with every other school, if we could get to there, I'd be thrilled. So and I think that would really weaken them tremendously and weaken the Democrats tremendously. So that's maybe that's the 5 to 10 year goal, because I can tell you that's not going to happen in 2 years. But I think if you're really steamrolling after that, because they're the largest. It's half the money. It's half the state money. 50%. Yeah. And then from the sort of bottom up, that's probably true in most states. I don't think New Hampshire is like if you go and look up, like, well, how much do we actually spend on the schools versus the roads versus the police? It's actually pretty interesting to look at, because you'll find like, police actually don't cost. Like, I pay like $40 a month effectively for police. Like, if you took the costs and divided it all out, like that's actually what whereas if you look at what you're paying for the schools, paying a lot more, thousands a year, tens of thousands a year. So
they're very pernicious about those school taxes too.
Yeah. So like that's it. We don't care. We don't need to care about the roads. Like for 5%, if 3% of our money or 5% of our money is going to the roads, like that seems like just not the roads aren't that bad. I'm sure there's room for improvement. But like that, it's just not, that's just not where you need to be. And the other thing, I guess so that's the sort of heat side. The bottom up side is like, what can you do that no one notices, that has implications that people don't even realize immediately? Or what can you do that's just agreeable? Like, there's one where, and this is, and it's crazy because sometimes this stuff can happen last minute, and it's like, how did that even happen? There is one this year where it's about the income cap on home baked goods. So at what point did you can do home kitchens, you can do home but the way the law was written is once you cross a certain numerical sale in goods, then you have to get the license. So we already had this law. So there was a cap on it. And so once you sold more than, I don't know, $30,000 in baked goods or whatever, then you had to get the license. They were spending a bunch of time arguing over the cap. Somehow at the last minute, the cap just got removed and the bill got all the way through and passed and signed by the
nice.
Right. I was like, wait a minute, you guys weren't even talking about that. And then at the last minute, the cap just is, and it's like, and so with these because who actually cares? Who on the Democrat, who is there on the other side of this issue to be like, no, we can't let people bake cookies in their homes and sell them. Like, there's just not, and so finding ways where, and of course that's the opposite of the teachers because they're the most powerful, but finding things where they almost no one even knows that they happened. Right. That's how little people care about them. And so that's the stuff you can do all the time. That's the stuff that, honestly, even if we mostly get elected as Republicans, although not entirely, even if we mostly get elected as Republicans, you can do some of these even in Democratic majority, So, and so that's the kind of stuff I think that we'll always be able to, get done. I mean, I'm sure the remaining drug issues, will be fixed, and so on. So it's just like whatever we can do to keep accelerating it. I want to be figuring out how to be getting, I think 1,000 libertarians, coming here per year is really the minimum, I don't want to dip below that number again, So, and if we keep doing that, it just starts being more, more and more of us, and that just gets more and more, powerful, and all of a sudden we're everywhere, so.
Yeah. I remember hearing, I think it was you laying out how the Free State Project kind of worked in the idea, and I think that's absolutely fascinating. So I guess the one of the last questions I want to ask you is where do you see Pork Fest over the next couple of years? Because I'm thinking I'm really, 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 really going to try to make it up there next year.
Yeah, you've got to come. Especially, it sounds like if you're getting out of Pennsylvania, which is a good choice. Come up, bring your wife. It's you have both of you come up. It's a great chance to really get to meet people and experience some of the things that are possible up here. I also recommend spending don't just do Pork Fest. If you can spend a couple of days after Pork Fest, just checking out actual towns and actual places. Because Pork Fest is you'll just be there the whole time basically. That's what everyone. That's really what everyone should do. Everyone's got to do at least their one trip too. You've got to do your journey to Mecca and your Hajj or whatever. And I like to always just find whatever analogy will bother people. So actually, yeah, I've combined them now. So you have to do your Hajj to libertarian Israel, right? That way, if you say it that way, everyone agrees with you. I know how to persuade people, right? We were talking about that. Yeah, that's very persuasive. Yeah, that's the number one thing, man. I really think you've got to do it. Don't worry about the internet. People can come up anytime as well. I'm also very happy to help anyone. Like anyone, if you follow me on Twitter or whatever, shoot me a DM, reach out to me because you're getting that. Like for example, can't believe I didn't even bring this up earlier. Like we have a bunch of right-wing extremists that have started a Free State gym. We have a Free State-owned barbell club. So it's like a powerlifting gym. It's obviously there's like locals who are members, but like that's the kind of thing again that changes minds. Oh, look, the Free State Barbell Club popped up, and people just come in and lift there. So that's the kind of stuff that I don't think it exists anywhere else. Where you've got to it's like going into Chinatown or whatever. You've got there's the Free State everything. There's somehow the Free State version of whatever it is that you're into, and that's why you have to visit, because that whatever that is for each person can't be described, but it probably exists.
All right, so then if I make it out there next year, which I'm thinking is probably going to be possible, that means I'm going to have to bring my band up there so we could play at Pork Fest, and then go to the Free State Barbell Club and throw down some heavy ass weights, because I got some goals for numbers in mind, but we'll see if that happens. But
they brought the gym to Pork Fest this year, actually, so they had a full.
Oh shit!
Yeah, dude, that's what I said. People don't understand what Pork Fest is. Like it's wild, man. People bring in everything. Yeah, so yeah, you could have done. They had a deadlifting competition at Pork Fest, so you could have participated. You could have, and I imagine it will happen next year. So.
Oh man! All right. Well, that means I got to start training then a little bit harder in the deadlift, so that way I can officially claim the title of the most jacked libertarian in all of libertarianism. That's been the goal, but I think I can get it. Jeremy, it's been an absolute blast. Do you got anything else, or do you want to do plugs and we'll close her out?
No, this was great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Go ahead. Do your plugs. Where can everybody find you, support you?
I don't know what are my plugs. Follow me on Twitter, Jeremy Kauffman. Follow Free State Project on Twitter, Free State NH. If you're not using Odyssey to watch this video and you're watching it on YouTube, you can go to Odyssey probably and watch it on Odyssey. And
yes,
hopefully there will be very good news in that front in the future for people who are sad that Kyle didn't get to talk to me about it more. But that's all coming up, and those are my plugs.
Nice, man. Well, I really, really appreciate your time. We'll have to do it again sometime, because I think you and I both look at things in a very, very similar way, and we're not complete and total fuckheads. So, yeah, dude, if you have anything else, we'll close her out, and I'll see you on the other side.
Great conversation.
Absolutely.